Hey guys, tonight we slip into a world thick with wood smoke, flickering torches, and the hush of things unsaid. You're not in your bed anymore. You're crouched in the corner of a medieval tavern where the air is spiced with sweat ale and the faint scent of burning pine. Outside, the sky is navy black, and inside, strangers whisper over mugs of mead, voices low but urgent. They're talking about dreams, bad ones. One man swears he saw his mother dead 3 winters now, crying at the edge of his bed. Another claims he dreamt of a wolf chewing through his arm and woke to find his brother dead from fever. You sip something warm from a clay cup, but it does little to stop the chill creeping up your spine. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from a cozy room in Warsaw or a sleepy porch in New Mexico, drop your local time and location in the comments. I love seeing where you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit back against the stone wall. The innkeeper's dog snuffles by, tail wagging absently, and the murmurs continue. No one here thinks dreams are just leftover brain static. In the Middle Ages, dreams weren't silly. They weren't random. They were warnings, messages, tests. And sometimes, just sometimes, they were believed to be traps. This tavern, though, it's a perfect starting point. Because if you want to understand how medieval people thought about dreams, you need to plant yourself right in the middle of their everyday life. There's no Freud here. No Netflix crime dramas whispering into your subconscious. What you have instead is God the devil, saints, demons, ancient folk tales, and that one weird dream you can't shake even after 3 days. The fire pops in the hearth, and someone makes the sign of the cross. One guy leaning on a crutch explains he always dreams of drowning before it rains, every time he says, and always in the same swamp. Another says his sister dreamt of a silver fish leaping into her lap and was married within the month. Whether it's truth or ale-fueled nonsense, no one laughs. They nod, because here dreams have teeth. A scholarly traveler in the corner listens with interest. His hood is pulled low, but he scribbles something into a leather-bound journal. Maybe a monk, maybe just curious. He's likely heard this before, that poor folks' dreams tend to predict bad harvests, while nobles dream of celestial wars or faceless lovers in silk. Hierarchy even seeps into sleep. You let the words drift past you. People dream of burning cities, of angelic choirs, of dogs with human eyes, and always the dreams mean something. Sometimes people take action based on them. Murray, avoid a journey, plant in a different field, or even report the vision to the local priest. That can go well or very badly. In fact, if someone claims their dream was from God, they'd better hope it doesn't contradict the church. Otherwise, inquisition, trials. Nice knowing you. Historians still argue whether medieval people truly believed every dream came from outside themselves, or if they just used that idea to explain the occasional weird night. It's likely a bit of both, but one thing's for sure. In the glow of torchlight, with the world so dark and uncertain, dreams felt very real. Outside, the wind shifts. A loose shutter bangs. A man jerks upright hand on his dagger, and everyone jumps. Laughter bubbles up, but it's nervous. Superstition isn't just for the illiterate. Even scholars wrote about dreams with awe. Want a real curveball? One lesser-known 14th century belief claimed dreams were more accurate during the dog days of summer, especially August, because that's when the human soul was more porous. There's no clear reason why, but it shows how intricately dreams were tied to the calendar, the cosmos, even the weather. The man with the crutch spits into the fire and mutters, "Dreams always mean something." That's why I never tell mine aloud. You glance around the room. Maybe you won't either. One woman, face-lined like bark, says her daughter dreamt of a snake in the bed, then miscarried the next day. Everyone falls quiet. These aren't ghost stories to them. These are warnings passed from mouth to mouth, as sacred as scripture, as dangerous as plague. You shift in your spot heart, thudding just a bit faster. The candle wax pools and drips like a tiny glowing omen. A baby stirs in someone's lap. A dog whines, and the fire, low and watchful, crackles again. It's going to be a long night. You end up sleeping beside the hearth, curled like a dog on a bundle of someone else's straw. The inn cleared out eventually. Voices fading boots stomping off into the cold. But the dreams didn't leave with them. They're thick in the air here. You feel them creeping in with the smoke, clinging to your cloak, whispering things behind your eyes, even before they shut. Your body aches. The stones beneath the straw are as forgiving as a landlord during famine. But this is how most people sleep in the medieval world. Not in downy beds with privacy and peace, but next to fires in groups often sharing space with livestock. If you're lucky, no lice tonight. And when you do dream, because you will, it won't be anything subtle. Medieval folks believed sleeping near fire could spark dreams of the underworld. Literal heat, they thought, stoked the imagination and summoned sinful visions. Maybe that's why you dream of shadows dancing across the walls, whispering names in a language you've never heard. Or maybe it's just your leg cramping. You stir. The room is dark now, save for the coals. Somewhere a baby cries, real or not, you can't tell. You remember hearing once that, in some French villages, it was thought that dreams right before dawn carried more weight. Something about the veil between worlds thinning just before the cock crowed. Which is weird because you just heard a rooster. You roll over and press your face into the straw. Dreams were shaped by more than just your sleeping position. In fact, you were told, maybe by that traveling scholar, that sleeping on your back invited visions from heaven while lying on your left side summoned bad spirits. No one can agree why, but it gave restless villagers something else to blame. Historians still argue whether these sleeping rules were widespread across Europe or more local customs passed along orally. But archaeological evidence suggests beds, even for the wealthy, were often cramped, shared, and tilted. Try having a peaceful, unbroken dream while your brother snores into your collar and your goat steals your blanket. You dream of water, deep black water, not moving just there. Someone watches you from across it. You wake with a jolt, heart hammering. You tell no one, because here's the thing. Even if dreams were common conversation, not all were safe to admit. A dream of death, of seduction, of devils. You could end up in confession or in stocks, so you keep yours close. Back in this world, the hearth has cooled. You sit up. Your back aches in a new and exciting way. Someone's snoring like a saw against oak. You stretch your arms and look around. A few other travelers are waking, shaking off the night. One rubs his eyes and says he dreamt of a bleeding son. The old woman from last night nods solemnly. War, she says, like it's already begun. You blink. It's easy to forget, with all our electric blankets and blackout curtains, just how close medieval people lived to the edge of life and death. Famine or pestilence, all within a day's ride. Dreams weren't quaint. They were one of the few systems for predicting the unpredictable. Your neighbor didn't own a calendar, but he knew his wife dreamt of owls before her father died. And what if you didn't dream? That was worrying too. Some thought it meant you'd lost touch with the divine. Others said it meant your soul was trapped in the body like a fly in a jar. In monasteries, monks even recorded dream droughts during periods of intense fasting, as if the body gave up even imagining hope. One fringe belief, whispered in Bohemia, held that people who never dreamed were actually dead souls in living bodies, cursed to walk unnoticed among the breathing. It didn't catch on too depressing, probably, but it's a good reminder that the medieval mind wasn't one to shy away from the macabre. You rub your eyes. The rooster crows again. This time it sounds closer. The innkeeper stomps through, cursing at the cold and knocking over someone's bucket. People groan and stretch. Another day begins. No one asks what you dreamt. They just assume you're still sorting through it. You are. You step outside into the mist. It curls around your ankles like silk, cold and damp. The sky is the color of old wool. A man on a horse rides past, muttering to himself, face pinched with worry. You wonder what dream woke him this morning. Because in this world, dreams aren't a sideshow. They're a warning system, a weather forecast, and sometimes a sentence. You follow the morning fog down a dirt path toward the village chapel, your boots sucking slightly in the mud. It's quiet, too early for market chatter, too late for owls. The chapel door groans as you push it open, and the scent of incense, sweet, earthy clinging, wraps around you like a blanket that somehow makes your skin itch. A single candle flickers beside a wooden carving of St. Michael. His sword gleams, but only faintly, just enough to make you imagine it twitching. You shake the thought away. Inside this chilly little stone church, people often bring their dreams to the altar. Not just prayers, dreams. Because for medieval folks, dreams weren't just your brain's weird way of binge-watching anxiety. They were often considered direct messages from God, or sometimes from his celestial crew. Take the story of Joseph, for example. No, not Technicolor coat Joseph, though, yes, him too. But Joseph of Nazareth, the one who dreamed that his fiancée Mary was pregnant and still a virgin. A bold claim, unless you've got heaven's courier service in your dreams. That story set a powerful precedent. If God could send instructions via dream to Joseph, he could do it to anyone. Farmers, monks, that grumpy guy who sells onions in the market. You sit on one of the wooden pews, worn smooth by generations of butts and burdens. A woman enters, quietly kisses her fingers, and touches the foot of a stone saint. You hear her whisper, "Let the next dream be gentle." You're not sure if she means hers or someone else's. In countless sermons, priests told their flocks that dreams could come from one of three sources: God, the devil, or digestion. The divine ones were rare and usually clear. Prophecies, angelic messages, warnings of danger. These were dreams people trusted, even if they scared them. In fact, the scarier, the more they believed it came from a higher source. Peaceful dreams, those were more suspect. Historians still debate how frequently these divine dream claims were accepted as truth versus manipulated for power. It's possible many were just pious fictions offered as spiritual currency, but others recorded in careful Latin in dusty monastery books show a pattern of eerie repeated visions across regions. That's hard to fake. Some people, particularly saints, seem to get dreams the way some people get coupons constantly and always right on time. Take Hildegard of Bingen, a 12th century abbess with migraines and a hotline to heaven. She described whole visions in sleep of cosmic harmony, musical spheres, and divine fire. You probably wouldn't want to share a room with her during nap time, but the church took her seriously. She even advised emperors. Still, not all divine dreams were about glory and stars. Sometimes they were just instructions. Move west, delay your trip, forgive your enemy. In one recorded case, a blacksmith in Cologne dreamt he should repair the old church gate he'd been avoiding. And when he did, they found a bag of coins hidden in the crumbling stone. The priest called it a miracle of obedience. The blacksmith called it a lucky nap. You glance up at the stained glass window. The light is growing. It streaks across the pews like soft ribbons of lemon and ash. Even peasants whose lives were mostly mud taxes and toothaches were told to pay attention to dreams. Especially before big events, births, deaths, marriages, long journeys. They'd ask the village wise woman or priest for interpretation, sometimes even fasting before bed to clear the soul's channel. Yes, fasting. Because some believed a full belly blurred divine signals. Too much pork and you'd just dream of pigs, not prophecies. A bell tolls faintly from a nearby hill. Someone else enters the chapel. He smells like firewood and sleep. His eyes are wide red-rimmed. You don't have to ask. He had a dream. He doesn't speak to you, but you hear him whisper to the virgin statue. He was covered in feathers, all black. He held my hand and said nothing. He touches his chest and sits. This might sound strange to you with your playlists and melatonin gummies, but in a world where almost nothing could be predicted, whether illness, war, a dream was the closest thing to a divine calendar. You couldn't ignore it. Not when your priest might ask you about it. Not when half your neighbors secretly wondered if your dreams had something to do with the late frost or that missing cow. So you sit quietly for a while, letting the candlelight flicker in your peripheral vision and the scent of old stone and wax warming the air. There's a peacefulness here, but also a weight. Dreams carry consequences. You step outside as the sun finally crests the horizon. It's not golden, it's more like a tired yellow. The kind that gives everything the color of hay and old parchment. The kind of morning where anything could happen, where a dream might still be lingering in the folds of your cloak. The path from chapel to market winds past muddy hovels and smoke-thick chimneys, but your thoughts don't follow it. You're stuck on that man's dream, the one with the feathers and silence. What did it mean? Was it good? Was it a warning? No one told him, and maybe no one ever will. But that's the trick of it. In medieval life, silence in dreams could be just as loud as speech. You duck under a laundry line and step aside for a cart full of onions and frowning children. Behind you, a woman mutters something and makes a quick sign of the cross. Because while divine dreams were treasured, there was another kind, far more feared: nightmares. And not just your average, "oh no, I forgot pants at school" dream. We're talking night terrors, demonic intrusions, visions. So vivid, people believed the devil himself had climbed into their beds. And sometimes they weren't wrong. You pass a timber-framed home where a bundle of dried herbs hangs over the doorframe. Mugwort and wormwood protection against bad dreams. A dog sniffs your boots. You don't stop walking. Medieval people believed nightmares were more than bad sleep. They were spiritual attacks, especially if you woke up gasping, paralyzed, unable to speak or move. In fact, they had a name for the culprit: the incubus, a demon, usually male, that crept onto your chest and squeezed the breath out of you. Delightful bedtime thought, isn't it? This wasn't just spooky folklore. Church texts, medical books, and even royal advisors wrote warnings about nighttime visitations. Victims described a crushing pressure on the chest, voices they couldn't understand, and the sense of being watched, even touched. Sound familiar? Sleep paralysis, sure. But try explaining that when your nearest doctor thinks leeches are cutting-edge science. Historians still debate whether these experiences were genuinely believed to be supernatural, or if people just lacked better vocabulary for trauma panic or neurological events. But the emotional truth, the fear, that was real. People burned incense before bed, said prayers, laid iron blades under pillows to keep demons away. Some even wore amulets made from toad bones or bits of consecrated wax. Don't try that at home. Seriously, you stop by a market stall selling cheese that smells like ambition gone wrong. Next to it, a parchment vendor hawks tiny dream guides, little folded manuals with symbols and explanation. One shows a dog eating bread. Beware false friends. Another shows a falling star. Fortune delayed. A rooster with 2 heads. No, thank you. You pick one up. The ink is smudged but still legible. Hundreds of people use these manuals. They weren't considered superstition. They were practical tools like almanacs or herbal guides. Why wouldn't you want to know what your dream meant, especially if it involved fire blood or a suspicious goat? There was even a sort of dream cast system. If a priest dreamt of a serpent, it might signal a heretic hiding nearby. If you dreamt of a serpent, it probably meant you were sinful. Charming, right? Authority had a funny way of shaping meaning, but nightmares weren't always grand and biblical. Sometimes they were petty. A young wife dreams her husband is sneaking off to see another woman, then wakes up and slaps him. In medieval Italy, a court record actually describes a dispute sparked by a dream accusation. Spoiler, it didn't end well. Dreams could start feuds, break marriages, trigger investigations. And if your nightmare included anything that resembled a church on fire or a saint weeping, you'd better tell the right people, or the wrong people might come knocking. You buy the Parchment Dream Guide? Not because you believe it well, maybe a little, but because it smells like old ink and mystery. You tuck it into your cloak. The market is busier now. Chickens protest their cages. A baker flings flour with joyful violence. But here and there you spot small signs. A protective charm around a child's neck, a whispered prayer as someone passes a black goat, a man selling dream balm made from lavender and sheep's fat. That one's bold. There's a nervous energy, as if people are still carrying something from their dreams into the daylight, which, let's be honest, they probably are. You can't just shake off a vision of falling into a pit full of mirrors. That kind of thing lingers. And medieval folks didn't try to forget. They remembered. Held onto dreams like warnings or riddles, asked friends, priests, healers. Sometimes they acted on them immediately. Travel delayed engagement. Broken crops burned instead of harvested. Why? Because ignoring a dream could be dangerous. If you had a nightmare and didn't change your plans, and then something awful happened, that was on you. A dream ignored was a curse invited. You pause under an archway, feeling the sun finally warm your face. The fear of night recedes, but only just. Tonight you'll sleep again, and you wonder what will be waiting. The sun is higher now, peeling away the last wisps of mist from from the thatched roofs. You follow a crooked lane out of the Market Square parchment guide still tucked into your cloak and head toward a small cottage where rumor says someone keeps the real dream books, not the scribbled pamphlets in the market. No, these are old, Latin ink, margins full of strange diagrams and drawings of animals with human eyes. And if you're lucky, the woman who owns them might actually let you see one. Her house is low hidden behind an overgrown hedge and a gate held shut with rope and a wish. A cat the size of a tavern chicken watches you from the roof. You nod respectfully, just in case. You knock. No one answers. You knock again. Eventually, the door creaks open. A woman stares at you. She's wearing 3 shawls and what looks like a curtain tied around her waist. Her hair is long silver and clearly hasn't met a comb since the last crusade. You want the dreams, she says. Not a question. You nod. She lets you in. The air inside is warm, heavy with dried herbs and faintly smells like candle smoke and very old cheese. Books are everywhere, stacked on benches, wedged into cupboards, half buried in baskets of apples. And sure enough, some are dream books. Actual medieval dream manuals were fascinating beasts. Most were translations of even older Arabic or Greek texts. Some came through Spain, others through Italy, carried by traders, monks, and bored scribes with too much ink and not enough supervision. They combined Christian theology, astrology, and straight-up folklore into something equal parts spiritual guide and party game. You open one gently, the vellum pages creaking like old knees. Inside, everything is categorized by dream symbol. Water teeth, birds, blood hair, and yes, goats. You find this entry? To dream of hair falling from the head portends shame and sorrow. To dream of combing hair is the untangling of secrets. You raise your eyebrows. The woman snorts. That one's always true, she mutters. Historians still argue whether the general population really had access to these books, or if they were limited to the educated elite. But some versions were simplified, copied over and over, and passed around markets and monasteries. Some were even turned into illustrations, what we'd now call infographics, but with more snakes. You ask her how people use them now. Mostly for love, she says, or crops, or death. Casual. You flip further. Some entries are wildly specific. To dream of frogs on fire means betrayal by kin. To eat butter in a dream means loss of status. To fly above trees means danger from below. There's a page with illustrations rudimentary, but strangely unsettling. A man vomiting coins, a chicken with a human face, a woman walking into a mirror. You shut the book. She watches you with a knowing look, then pours you a steaming cup of something that might be tea, or might be her failed attempt at cider. Either way, it smells like time and curiosity. You ask her what she thinks dreams really are. She shrugs. Depends. Sometimes God, sometimes gut. Sometimes things you aren't brave enough to say while awake. You sip. It burns. She chuckles. There's a small box near the fire, filled with strips of paper. Personal dream records, she explains. People write their dreams, drop them off, and she interprets them for coin or chicken or favors. You glance at a few. I saw my father on the roof. He pointed to the moon and cried. My feet were roots. No one noticed. A wolf kissed my face and called me brother. You set the box down slowly. People take this seriously. You begin to understand why. When the world offers no certainty, when war, illness, taxes, and loss are constant companions, a dream feels like something you can hold. Maybe not control, but at least respond to. And while some dreams are just stress mixed with too much lentil stew, others seem more. Strange coincidences, vivid symbols, warnings that land just right. It makes sense that people would try to build a system out of it. Even if that system involves frogs on fire. She walks you to the door. Write yours down tonight, she says, her voice softer now. Even if it's stupid, even if it's scary. You nod. Especially if it's scary, she adds. Outside, the world is full of bird song and fresh manure. A child runs by with a stick and an expression of utter triumph. Life marches on. But part of you stays in that cottage, flipping pages in your mind, wondering what last night's dream meant and what tonight's might dare to say. You walk away from the dream woman's cottage with a strange taste of time still on your tongue and a head full of images, some yours, some borrowed from that box of confessions. The road is dry now. dust rising with each step. The sky overhead stretches wide and pale like old linen. As you round a bend toward a small grove, you can't help but think of how many famous figures from history had their decisions shaped or at least justified by dreams. These weren't just peasants clinging to symbols. Kings, saints, emperors, entire wars, alliances, even cities were influenced by what someone saw while snoring. Take Charlemagne, for instance. The man dreamt he saw St. Peter giving him a sword and a warning: defeat the Saracens, or else, naturally, he took this as a divine green light to start conquering southern Spain. Did he already want to go to war? Probably. But now, he had holy validation. You find a fallen log and sit for a moment, the sun warming your back. The trees whisper overhead, leaves rustling like parchment being turned. And here's where it gets interesting. One of the most famous dreamers in Christian tradition is Joseph the dream interpreter from Genesis. Not the stepdad of Jesus this time. Sold into slavery by his charming brothers, Joseph ends up in an Egyptian prison. His big break? Interpreting dreams about cows. Yes, really. 7 fat cows eaten by 7 skinny ones. It meant 7 good years, followed by 7 bad. Pharaoh was impressed. Joseph got promoted. Crops were saved. You know, classic overnight success. Joseph became the archetype, the poster boy for divine dream decoding. Monks copied his story into illuminated manuscripts for centuries. Anytime someone had a weird dream about wheat or animals or celestial signs, they'd say, just like Joseph. Even if the dream involved, say, a goat doing cartwheels. Historians still argue whether leaders truly based decisions on dreams, or whether they retrofitted dreams to match political goals. Was it faith? Theater? A little of both. If you're Charlemagne and you want to go to war, claiming St. Peter visited your dreams is a convenient way to skip debate. But for many in the medieval world, divine dreams weren't just royal privileges. Stories circulated about shepherds dreaming of lost relics or bakers being told to dig in a certain field only to find buried saints or sacred springs. Even when skeptics scoffed, someone always believed, enough at least to keep the stories alive. And then there were the saints. Oh boy, Saint Perpetua in the 3rd century wrote of a dream in which she climbed a ladder guarded by a dragon, reached heaven, and saw a giant cheese wheel. Okay, fine. It was probably a symbol of the Eucharist, but still, that dream gave her strength to face martyrdom. Cheese or no cheese, that's commitment. You remember a fragment from one of the books earlier. To dream of cheese is to be near God's table. You wonder if that would hold up in court. Dreams gave authority. That's the point. They let someone say, I saw this, and have people listen. Sometimes more than they listen to facts or sermons. After all, if God or Mary or a flaming angel shows up in your sleep, who's going to argue? There's another figure worth mentioning, Constantine the Roman emperor. Before a big battle, he allegedly dreamed of a shining cross in the sky and a voice that said, in this sign, conquer. He did. He won. And then he converted to Christianity. No pressure. Of course you might wonder, did Constantine actually have the dream before the battle? Or did he tell the story afterward to make his victory sound? Pre-approved by heaven. Medieval chroniclers didn't question that part. They leaned in. You rise from the log, brushing dust from your cloak. A small chapel sits ahead, barely visible through the trees. Its bell is cracked, its door ajar. You can already imagine someone dreaming inside. Perhaps an old man seeing saints in candlelight, or a young woman dreaming of lions walking on 2 legs. Both might wake changed, and who's to say they aren't? Because whether you believe dreams are divine postcards, or just your brain making weird soup out of daily scraps, the medieval world acted on them. They built shrines, made laws, burned people at the stake, all because someone dreamt something they couldn't ignore. You pass the chapel quietly, unwilling to disturb whatever might be sleeping or watching inside. As the wind picks up, you pull your cloak tighter and keep walking. You're starting to understand. In a time with so few explanations, dreams offered not just meaning, but power. Your steps take you into the heart of a small village now, where laundry flaps between crooked houses and smoke curls from chimneys like lazy spirits stretching toward heaven. Children chase chickens. A dog barks at something invisible. You try not to read too much into any of it, but your mind still lingers on dreams, their danger, their promise. and the fact that not all dreams were treated with reverence. Some were feared because of what they revealed or what they tempted. And that brings you here to the threshold of sin. The church had a lot to say about dreams, as you might expect, especially those dreams, the warm ones. The ones that sneak up on you in the hours just before dawn, when the body forgets restraint and the mind becomes a theater of desire. Yes, those dreams. A priest once called them the devil's lullabies. Charming. You pause by a well where a girl is drawing water. She eyes you, then glances away. There's an unspoken rule here. You don't ask people what they dreamt unless they offer, especially if they're red-faced about it. In medieval thought, dreams of temptation, particularly sexual dreams, weren't just awkward, they were dangerous, because they blurred the lines between thought and action, between soul and flesh. Did you sin in a dream, or was it a test, or worse, proof of corruption within? Some theologians argued that involuntary dreams, especially ones accompanied by physical evidence, weren't sinful so long as you didn't enjoy them. Others said intent didn't matter. If you felt desire, even in sleep, you'd better confess, or else. Historians still debate how seriously these ideas were enforced. In monasteries, rules varied. Some monks were expected to report their dreams to superiors. Others were punished for even mentioning certain content. There's a recorded case of a novice monk being denied communion for 3 weeks after admitting he dreamt of kissing the Virgin Mary on the mouth. Oops. You wander into the square where 2 men are arguing over a wheelbarrow full of onions. Their voices rise, then fall into muttering. A dog lifts its leg. Life goes on. But sin dreams weren't just for monks. Ordinary people wrestled with them too. A young man dreams of a neighbor's wife. He wakes guilty. Does he tell the priest or the neighbor? Please don't tell the neighbor. Or does he try to forget it and pray harder the next night? There's a whisper that certain foods increase the chance of sinful dreams. Onions, for example, or cheese, or eel. Always eel. You pass a fishmonger's cart and smirk. It smells like temptation. One fringe belief, found in the margins of an old manuscript from northern Germany, claimed that eating garlic on Thursdays warded off dreams of lechery. Naturally, people began eating double garlic on Thursdays. Probably made things awkward at dinner, but the dreams apparently stopped. And women had it worse. A woman admitting to a dream of desire could be accused of inviting sin, even in sleep. Some confessional guides advised priests to ask whether a woman dreamt of a man as husband or as lover, as if a dream could tell the difference. As if dreams asked for labels. You pass a stone statue of a saint in the square. Her eyes are downcast, her mouth slightly parted. A girl has tied a ribbon around the saint's wrist, bright red, fraying at the ends. A secret prayer, perhaps. Or a confession no one else would hear. There's a story told in certain villages, whispered only among women of a nun who dreamed of kissing a stranger, only to wake with rose petals on her tongue. No one ever found the roses, or the man, but her dreams became famous, and she became a cautionary tale, or maybe a miracle. It depends who's telling it. Dreams, you realize, weren't just warnings or messages. They were mirrors. Sometimes foggy, sometimes too clear. They revealed what people wanted, what they feared, what they couldn't say in daylight. And in a world governed by rules, guilt, and power that made them both sacred and suspect. You sit near the well, listening to the creak of buckets and the cluck of hens. A boy throws a stone at a passing crow. Misses, laughs anyway. Tonight, someone here will dream of something they shouldn't. And tomorrow, they'll wake with the weight of it. Maybe they'll confess. Maybe they'll stay silent. Maybe they'll dream it again. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the breeze wash over your face. It smells of wood smoke, bread, and secrets. By mid-afternoon, the village smells like stew and sweat, and your boots have gathered more dust than a monk's bookshelf. You find yourself drifting toward a small garden behind the local apothecary, where vegetables wrestle for sunlight, and a cluster of bees hums like monks in a lazy chant. A bench half rotten but still upright offers a brief respite. You sit, and your mind, always circling the topic like a hawk over a nervous rabbit, lands on something you heard back at the market. Don't eat eel before bed unless you want fire in your sleep. You thought it was just a joke. Now you're not so sure, because medieval people didn't just believe dreams had meaning. They believed dreams could be caused by what you ate, how you slept, even when you went to bed. And eel, well, it had a reputation. People believed certain foods heated the body and stirred up the humors, those mysterious fluids that supposedly governed your health, emotions, and dreams. Eel was thought to be hot and moist in quality. Yes, brace yourself, which meant it could trigger lustful or feverish dreams. Cheese had similar effects. So did wine, especially red. Historians still argue how much of this was based on real observation versus old Greco-Roman medical hand-me-downs. After all, the humoral theory was already creaky by the 14th century, but still clung to life like mold in a monastery. The theory claimed your body had 4 fluids: blood phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, and dreams were like weather patterns inside you, driven by which fluid was winning the turf war that day. Too much black bile, melancholic dreams, graves, shadows, lost children. Too much yellow bile, fiery visions, anger, teeth falling out, bears for some reason. Your stomach gurgles, interrupting this cheerful analysis. It turns out that digestion played a starring role in the medieval dreamscape. Sleep with a full belly, and you were inviting all kinds of visitors into your mind. Even monks wrote about this. One wrote quite seriously that his dream of being attacked by dogs was probably caused by an excess of lentils. Another blamed a dream of drowning on poorly cooked cabbage. You spot a cluster of herbs nearby: sage, rosemary, maybe some lavender. These weren't just seasoning. They were part of a quiet dream economy. Certain herbs were thought to induce peaceful vision. Mugwort especially had a reputation as a dream bringer. People would tuck it under pillows or burn it before bed to invite prophetic or calming dreams. Of course, the opposite was true too. Nightmares could be cured with a strong tea of valerian and vinegar, or if you were truly desperate, sleeping with a chunk of raw garlic under your tongue. No reports on how effective that one was, but probably not popular with bedmates. In southern France, some households even placed bowls of fresh water near their beds to cool the humors and ward off dream-induced fever. Others kept carved wooden charms under their mattresses, faces of saints, little crosses, even tiny mirrors to reflect away evil visions. And then there were the dream diets. Yes, these existed. Certain people, usually monks, mystics, or people with way too much free time, followed special eating routines to purify the body and enhance dreams. No red meat, no spices, no fermented anything, lots of water, lots of prayers. One 12th century mystic claimed he could walk beside the angels in dreams if he fasted for 3 days on bread and cold apples. You squint toward the sun and wonder what you'd dream about on 3 days of cold apples. Probably betrayal or oatmeal, hard to say. But it wasn't just about avoiding bad dreams. People sought specific dreams. Want to dream of your future spouse. Eat a salted egg before bed and repeat the Lord's Prayer backward. Want to find buried treasure? Sleep with a coin in your mouth. Want to avoid dreams altogether? Wear a tight cloth around your head to keep the images in. And yes, these were actual recorded remedies. You're not sure which is worse, the coin or the cloth. Both feel like dental emergencies waiting to happen. Yet in all of this, there's something oddly relatable. Because even now, people talk about late-night pizza sparking weird dream, or how stress mixes with dinner to create a dream where you're late to school while riding a goose. So maybe we haven't changed all that much. You lean back on the bench, letting the warm garden sounds fade into the background. A bee hovers near your boot. Somewhere nearby, someone laughs, and for a moment you imagine what it would feel like to be part of a world where dreams are just part of the daily toolkit. Where you check your teeth in the morning and ask, "So what did you see last night?" A cart rattles by on the road. You catch the scent of roasting onions and yes, eel. You smile. Tonight might be interesting. You pass under a crooked stone archway as the light begins to shift warmer now, slanting low in gold through the dust. The village is quieter in this hour. The noise dimmed like a fire-banked hearth. Doors creak closed. Chickens shuffle into coops. People are getting ready for supper. And sleep. And of course, dreams. But not all dreams come from saints or stews. Some come from the dead. You find yourself drawn toward the churchyard, a modest square of tangled grass and weathered stones. There's a hush here that goes deeper than silence, like the ground itself is holding its breath. You walk slowly between the crooked headstones, some barely legible, others crowned with moss. In the Middle Ages, dreams of the dead were common, expected even. If you lost someone, especially someone close, you were likely to see them again, not in the flesh but in sleep. And when they came, they usually had something to say, a warning, a request, sometimes forgiveness, but more often complaint. You sit on a low wall and watch as shadows stretch like sleepy cats across the graves. The breeze picks up, and you swear it carries whispers. Just leaves you, tell yourself. Just wind. But if you were a peasant in 1372, you wouldn't brush it off so easily. You'd believe you'd know that your dead grandmother could appear in your dream with a candle in one hand and a riddle in the other. And if you didn't solve it, well, maybe the crops fail, or someone gets sick, or a cow dies mysteriously with its eyes open. There are whole manuscripts filled with stories of dream visits from the dead. Some of them calm, others terrifying. One tells of a woman who dreamt her dead husband came to her and begged for masses to be said for his soul. She ignored the dream. That week, her oven caught fire. Coincidence? Historians still debate whether these dream visitations were culturally encouraged grief rituals or genuine spiritual experiences. In reality, they were probably both. In a world without therapists, a dream was often the only chance to say goodbye, or to say what you couldn't when the person was alive. You run your hand over a stone etched with nothing but a cross. It feels warm from the sun. But not all dead who visited dreams were welcome. There were stories of restless souls, the ones who'd been buried in sin or without proper rites. They showed up in dreams, looking hollow-eyed and rotten, asking for help. Water, prayers, burial. And if they were denied, things got worse. You glance at the tree line, just to check. People would light candles before bed or sprinkle holy water on their pillows to keep the dead at bay. And if that didn't work, they might visit the local priest or wise woman with trembling hands and a tale of a cousin who dreamed something terrible. You think of a line from one of those old dream books. If a dead one speaks to you, listen. If he touches you, pray. If he follows you, run. And yet, not every dream of the dead was dark. Sometimes they brought peace. A child dreams of her dead mother braiding her hair. A farmer dreams of his brother handing him seeds. A widow dreams of her husband holding her hand and smiling without speaking. These dreams weren't feared. They were held, spoken softly to friends shared and cornered. People believed the soul lingered near for a while. That dreams were the way back in. You stand brushing dust from your cloak. The sky is streaked now with apricot and plum. A bell chimes from the chapel tower, marking vespers. And you wonder if someone dreamt of you long after you'd gone. Would you have something to say? Would you be a warning? Or a comfort? The answer maybe depends on how well you sleep. Evening rolls in like a tide, slow at first, then all at once. You leave the graveyard behind boots, ticking on the cobbled road, as oil lamps sputter to life, one by one, casting pools of gold onto the stones. The village has taken on that twilight hush, the hour where work pauses, but sleep hasn't quite come to claim its dues. You wander without aim until you come to a bench outside the baker's house. It's warm from the day's heat and smells faintly of flour and firewood. You sit and wait. You're not sure what you're waiting for, maybe just a glimpse of something out of place. A flicker, a sign. Because tonight, you've been told, is a dangerous night to dream. An old woman with a basket passes you muttering about rats in the wheat and the strange weather. Then she adds almost as an afterthought, the dead walk early in their dreams tonight. You don't ask, you just nod. And you remember a tale you heard once about dreams before the plague. In the years just before the Black Death swept through Europe like a cruel wind, people started to report eerie dreams, strange omens, black rivers, walls oozing blood, pale horses that galloped without sound. A merchant's journal from Genoa mentions a dream in which every candle in the city blew out at once. He woke to find his wife already coughing. A monk in Avignon described a vision of the sky splitting open, raining ash over the cathedral. He wrote that he felt sick the next morning and was dead within 3 days. These were dreams people remembered wrote down, even as their friends and family dropped around them. Historians still debate whether these stories were documented as they happened or written afterward, colored by grief and hindsight. But it doesn't really matter, because to those who survived or didn't, these dreams weren't just nightmares. They were premonitions, and the line between coincidence and prophecy was thin enough to slip through. The smell of bread from the bakery fades, replaced by the cold scent of dusk. You pull your cloak tighter. There's a forgotten corner of Europe, where it said the dreams were so thick before the plague that people stopped sleeping altogether. A chronicler wrote that villagers kept each other awake with singing, drumming, or simply shaking each other if they started to doze. It didn't help, of course. The sickness came anyway. But maybe staying awake gave them the illusion of control for a few more hours. You look up, the stars are beginning to appear dim and uncertain. The moon rises low and orange like a bruised coin. You hear footsteps, slow, steady. A man in a tattered cloak walks past you without a word, his eyes glassy. He doesn't blink. Doesn't even seem to see you. Maybe he's just tired. Or maybe he's still dreaming. You remember another dream tale, this one from a Breton fishing village? A girl dreamt of rats pouring through the streets, not running away, but toward the sea. In the dream, she tried to stop them, woke up screaming. 2 weeks later, the first plague ship docked. Her mother insisted the dream meant her daughter had been chosen. The priest wasn't so sure. The girl, she never slept again. You breathe slowly, hands folded, watching the lantern light flicker against the dark. There's a silence in the air now, a deep one, like the world is holding its breath again. Maybe remembering, maybe warning. Dreams before disaster weren't always violent. Sometimes they were subtle, an unfamiliar face standing in your room, or a song no one could place echoing through the trees, a baby crying with no child nearby. The problem wasn't the content of the dreams. It was how real they felt, how sticky, how hard they were to forget, and how often they came true. People started keeping track. In some towns, dream journals became part of parish records, not just for mystics, but for anyone. You'd bring your strange vision to the priest, and he'd note it beside births, deaths, and rainfall. Marjorie dreamt of locusts and fire, market canceled, that sort of thing. Of course, not every priest approved. Some called it heresy. Others encouraged it, said it was God giving fair warning. You rise from the bench. The air is colder now, sharp around the edges. Someone down the lane sings a lullaby off-key but sweet. A dog howls long and low. And as you walk towards your lodging, you wonder, if you dreamed of smoke tonight, if you saw your own house burn down in your sleep, would you believe it? Would you stay home, or would you run? The inn is quieter than last night. Fewer travelers. The hearth burns low, the logs hissing with leftover rain. You slip through the doorway like a shadow, nod to the barkeep, and climb the stairs to your room, wooden floor creaking with every step like it's sighing under the weight of your thoughts. The door clicks shut behind you. You hang your cloak, light a stub of candle, and sit on the edge of the narrow bed. Straw pokes through the linen. The pillow smells like someone else's dreams. You stare at the flickering flame. Last night you dreamt of black water. Tonight, you wonder what waits behind your eyelids now. And if anyone will question you about it, come morning. Because in some corners of the medieval world, dreaming wasn't private. It was evidence. Especially if you dreamt of flying. Which brings us here to the line where dreams, magic, and danger blur. To the whisper of spirit flight. You've probably heard the term before. Witches' dreams, night journeys, spirit wandering. In medieval Europe, especially in the 14th and 15th centuries, there was a rising belief that certain people, usually women, surprise, surprise, left their bodies in the night and flew to secret gatherings. Some said they flew on broomsticks. Others claimed they rode animals or transformed into birds or cats. The method varied. The accusation didn't. Dreams of flying or of traveling through the air while asleep were sometimes used as proof of witchcraft. If a woman said she dreamed of soaring above forests or attending a mysterious nighttime feast, she might find herself on trial by morning. Historians still argue whether these accounts were fabrications extracted under torture or genuine beliefs held by the accused. But the details, strangely consistent across countries, suggest that some kind of shared dream imagery was circulating, or perhaps something deeper. You blow out the candle, letting the dark settle over you like a soft hood. In the records of the Inquisition, you'll find testimonies that read like dream journals. A woman confesses to dreaming of a black dog who carried her through the night. Another says she danced with women whose feet never touched the ground. A third describes eating honey from a silver bowl offered by a man with no face. These weren't just dreams. They were considered proof. A confession of a dream could be enough to land you in prison or worse. And yet people still told them, whether because they believed in the experience or because fear loosened the tongue. In some regions, the idea of spirit flight wasn't always tied to evil. Among the Benandanti of northern Italy, a group of self-proclaimed dream warriors in the 16th century, it was believed that certain people left their bodies at night to fight witches and protect their crops. They rode into battle on animals armed with fennel stalks and returned to their beds before dawn. Their dreams were acts of service. The church didn't agree. You shift in the dark. The bed creaks. You wonder idly what dreams are forming behind the walls around you. What visitors walk the halls of other minds tonight. And you think about how this belief of night journeys wasn't just fear of witches. It was a way to explain something bigger. That dreams felt real. Too real. And that maybe something left the body at night. Something vulnerable. Something sacred. Or something dangerous. You close your eyes, and immediately you feel like you're moving. Your limbs are still, but your mind floats just a little, like you're suspended above your own body. The room fades, but not completely. It's like walking through fog with a lantern you forgot to light. Some cultures believe that dreams were the soul traveling to gather information or visit faraway places. Others believe the soul left whether you wanted it to or not, and that demons could slip in while you were gone, hence the herbs, the iron, the prayers. A shadow moves across your dreamscape now. No sound, no face, just the sense that something is watching. And not with malice, but with interest. You blink, and the room returns. A rat scrapes under the floorboards. The fire below crackles once sharply. Somewhere, someone coughs in their sleep. You sit up, heart racing. Whatever that was it a dream or something older? You lie back down slowly, pull the blanket up to your chin, and whisper a prayer you don't fully believe. Not that it matters. The dreams are already on their way. You wake before the sun. Your breath curls in the cold air. The fire in the hearth below has long since died, and your blanket feels like it's made of woven frost. But it's not the chill that woke you. It's the dream. You don't remember much, just a falcon bleeding from the eyes, a rose petal caught in your mouth, and someone you didn't recognize, smiling in a way that felt like both a gift and a curse. You sit upright, heartbeat thick in your throat. The sky outside is still dark, but the kind of dark that promises dawn is thinking about it. You light your candle. Its tiny flame trembles like your hands. It would have been different if you were a noble. For the aristocracy, dreams weren't simply private puzzles. They were social currency, especially if the dream involved courtly love. Nobles loved their symbolism, and their dream interpretation, it was poetry in disguise. A knight dreams of a red falcon flying over a silver field. That's not just a bird. That's a coded message about passion, dominance, maybe even betrayal. A lady dreams of losing a ring in the snow, clearly a sign her suitor is unfaithful or that her feelings are slipping. You dress slowly, listening to the creak of the old beams above you. Somewhere a rooster decides it's time. The world begins to stretch its arms. In courtly culture, dreams were discussed as flirtation. A nobleman might send a letter to a lady describing his dream of her appearing in a moonlit garden cloaked in ivy. She might reply days later with a poem about a dream where she danced with a shadow in crimson. No names exchanged, just meaning layered like cake. Historians still debate whether these exchanges were purely literary games or if they genuinely shaped relationships. But what's clear is that among the upper classes, dreams were performance, theater of the subconscious, and everyone wanted front row seats. In a few courts like Burgundy or Naples, there were even professional dream interpreters, men trained in scripture, classical myth, and of course, gossip. They were half priest, half PR manager. The right interpretation could flatter a noble's ego. The wrong one could doom a marriage. You leave the inn quietly, stepping out into the blue-gray breath of early morning. The village is still asleep, but a few chimneys have started to smoke. You follow the lane toward the old manor house on the hill. The family there hasn't been important in years, but the house still stands like it remembers wealth. Ivy on stone, Windows, like watching eyes. As you approach, you think of a medieval romance tale, the kind copied in velvet-covered books by candlelight. In one, a lady dreams of a knight, trapped in a tower of thorns. She tells her confessor. Days later, a man arrives at court with a torn tunic and bleeding hands. Coincidence? Not in that world. In another tale, a noblewoman dreams of a serpent biting her ankle while she dances. She marries the wrong man the next week. That story ends with fire, literal and emotional. You walk the perimeter of the manor garden, dew soaking your boots. It's overgrown now, but once this would have been a place for secret glances and whispered dreams under trees trained into shapes. Courtly love and dreams were always entwined. Both were dangerous, both were indulgent, and both could be used to excuse behavior that otherwise, well, might not go over well with your husband. Dreams gave permission. They let people explore desires and regrets with just enough plausible deniability. I didn't want to think of him, a lady might say, but he came to me, in sleep. You pause by a crumbling stone bench, an inscription barely visible, reads something about roses and time. You sit. It makes sense that the nobility, surrounded by control over lands, people servants would cling to something unpredictable. Dreams couldn't be taxed, couldn't be married off, couldn't be punished, at least not openly. But they could still change lives. A noblewoman dreams of a dying tree blooming again. She changes her will the next morning. Her younger son inherits everything. Her elder son calls it a dream-induced madness. Her priest calls it divine vision. Who's right? Who's left? You stare at the sky as it lightens, thinking again of your own dream. The falcon, the rose, the smile. You don't know what it means yet, but something in your bones says, it wasn't just decoration. Maybe someone will write about it someday. Maybe someone already has. You leave the manor garden behind as the village stirs, fully awake. The sun climbs slow and pale over the horizon, casting that buttery, deceptive light that makes even broken fences look like something out of a painting. You take the long way back, cutting through narrow paths and muddy ruts until you find yourself near the edge of the fields. That's where you see him. An old man hunched on a three-legged stool, sharpening a blade with slow, precise motions. Beside him, a bundle of herbs, a loaf of bread, and more curiously, a carved wooden charm in the shape of a crescent moon. You nod. He nods back. Dream last night. He asks, not looking up. You pause. Maybe. He chuckles. Everyone says maybe. Turns out this is the village's dreamer. Every town had one or claimed to. Not a prophet. Not quite a seer. Just someone whose dreams kept coming true. Often enough that people started leaving offerings. Apples. Coins. Questions. He gestures to a rickety stool. You sit. Tell me what you saw. You hesitate. Then you say it aloud. The bleeding falcon, the rose petal, the smile. The words feel heavier in the air than they did in your chest. The old man doesn't flinch. Just nods like you've handed him a riddle he's heard before. Falcon's a sign of power, he says. But blood's a warning. Rose is love. Could be a woman. Could be a loss. He wipes the blade, sets it aside. The smile's the hard part. He doesn't explain. Just lets the words linger. In the Middle Ages, people like him held odd positions of influence. Not priests, not scholars, but trusted or feared nonetheless. A shepherd who dreamt of wolves before a real attack. A woman who always knew when someone was about to die. A girl who dreamt of water before the well dried up. They were the dreamers, local legends. And when their dreams stopped coming true, people whispered, wondered what sin had broken the gift. Historians still debate whether these people were self-made or appointed by the community, selected through reputation or desperation. But even without official titles, their role mattered, because someone had to help people make sense of what their sleeping minds revealed. The old man scratches behind his ear. Years ago, I dreamt a field of grain caught fire on the first cold night. Told them to harvest early. They didn't. We lost the crop. You watch his fingers thick, knotted, gentle despite the blade. This is a man who's lived more seasons than he remembers dream. You ask him if he ever had a dream that didn't come true. He smiles, but it's not kind. More often than I admit. And that's the danger. Because the moment a dreamer's vision fails, just once it shakes the trust. And sometimes something worse follows. There's a story half true by the sound of it about a woman who predicted the wrong wedding date for a local lord's daughter. The bride took ill. The dreamer was blamed. Driven out. Her name never spoken again, except when babies cried too much at night. Dreaming was a gift, but it was also a risk. You ask if he ever lies. If he ever tells someone what they want to hear, just to ease their mind. He doesn't answer directly. Just says, sometimes truth is too sharp for sleep. You nod. He offers you a scrap of bread. It's dry, but not unpleasant. The wind shifts, carrying the scent of tilled soil and chimney smoke. He points toward the woods. See the girl with the blue scarf. She dreams of falling, always falling. Says she never hits the ground. He chews thoughtfully. Some say that means she'll never find peace. Others say it means she'll live a long time. He shrugs. She just wants it to stop. There's something achingly human in that. You thank him, stand, brush off your cloak. He waves you off with a grunt. Next time, bring a question. The wind follows you down the lane. You pass villagers who nod to you now. Not because they know your name, but because you've spoken to the dreamer. That's enough. You think about what it means to be trusted with other people's visions, to bear the weight of meaning when no one knows what to believe, to be right just often enough to be dangerous. And you wonder what happens when you start dreaming things that come true. Afternoon deepens and the sun casts everything in long, sleepy lines. You follow the road toward the old abbey that crowns the edge of the village stone walls wrapped in ivy. A bell tower leaning like a tired monk. The fields roll around it like soft hills of bread dough, golden and patient. Inside, they say the monks dream in silence. And sometimes they write those dreams down. You approach the heavy wooden doors, and one creaks open before you even knock. A monk nods wordless and lets you in. The cool interior hits like a prayer-thick stone, dim, light air that smells of wax wool and distant rain. You walk slowly, boots muffled by worn rushes. Somewhere deeper in the cloisters, someone sings in Latin, slow melodic, like a lullaby carved into stone. This place is older than the village, older than the roads, and within these walls, dreams are treated like sacred texts. You're led to a side room, sparsy, a bench, a writing table, and a narrow window that lets in a sliver of sun. Another monk enters, younger, curious. He carries a bundle of parchments tied with twine. We record the dreams, he says quietly, as if even mentioning them too loudly might wake something. Not all of them, just the ones that come again. He unties the bundle and lays out the pages. The handwriting is careful slanted. At first glance, they look like prayers. But they're not. One recounts a dream of a beast with 7 legs and a priest's voice. Another describes a staircase that leads into water. Another still tells of a woman's face carved into bread. These came from different brothers, he says, but they're similar. Historians still debate whether monastic dream records were psychological explorations, spiritual practices, or simply the byproduct of too much fasting and isolation. But they're real. Preserved in archives, echoes of sleeping minds etched in ink. The rule of Saint Benedict, which governed many monasteries, warned monks against idleness and vain imaginations, but never outright banned dreams. Some abbots even encouraged recording them, believing they could be divine messages or temptations in disguise. You just had to discern which, and that was the hard part. You ask what happens if a monk dreams something truly disturbing, something violent or heretical. The young monk hesitates. He confesses it, he says, to the prior, sometimes to God. Sometimes he trails off. Sometimes we pray until it passes. You press gently. What if it doesn't pass? His silence is the answer. You think of the monk who dreamed of fire under the altar, who couldn't stop seeing it, who eventually stopped speaking altogether. That story made its way out into the world. They say he died holding a candle. He refused to blow out even when it burned his hand. You look back at the parchment. Many of the dreams here are symbolic ladders, lions, thorns, suns. But one in particular catches your eye. A dream of standing at the edge of a field. A voice says, "You are not meant to be soil." The monk wakes crying. No one knows who wrote it. The young monk rolls up the pages again gently. You can tell this is more than record keeping. It's preservation, protection, maybe even penance. You ask one last question, whether he dreams too. He nods, doesn't elaborate. And maybe he doesn't have to. Because in this place, silence is a kind of honesty and dreaming. It's a quiet conversation between the soul and something else, something not entirely within the walls. As you leave the abbey, the bell chimes behind you, slow and hollow. You feel it in your chest, more than your ears. The air outside is warmer. A bird cries from the roof. The path back to the village feels longer than before, though nothing has changed. You wonder if the monks will dream of you tonight. You wonder what they'll write. You return to the village just as twilight begins its quiet descent, shadows lengthening, lanterns lit with ritual care, and a soft hush settling over everything, like a woolen shawl. Your feet know the path now, of the rhythm of mud and stone, of faces and fires, and the slow turn of thought. But something pulls you sideways. You follow a narrow lane you hadn't noticed before, past a half-collapsed wall and a gate tangled with ivy. There's no sign, no welcome, but you push through anyway. And that's where you find it. A shrine. Not the grand sort with candles and painted saints, but a worn stone alcove nestled into the roots of a twisted yew tree. Inside, a wooden carving of the Virgin Mary, weathered and cracked. At her feet, cloth bundles flowers, long dead little carved birds, scraps of parchment weighed down with stones. It takes a moment to understand. This is a dream shrine. You kneel carefully, respectfully, and read. One parchment reads, "I dreamt of my mother's hand, holding mine. She said not to worry about the baby." Another, "The wolf came again. I locked the door this time. I woke up dry." A third, just a single line. "He said he forgave me." You sit in silence, heart heavy and strangely full. These aren't prophecies. They're releases. People come here to lay their dreams down, to let them rest, where maybe someone holy is still listening. In the Middle Ages, shrines like this were scattered across the countryside. Not officially sanctioned, not marked on maps. But they existed. Dream shrines, healing stones, whisper trees. Places where people brought their visions not for answers, but for relief, especially when the dreams wouldn't go away. There's a tradition older than most churches of sleeping near holy places to receive healing dream. Pilgrims would journey for days, lie on stone floors beside saints' tombs, and pray for dreams that would cure illness, grief, doubt. They called it incubation. The body might be broken, but if the dream was kind, the soul might still be whole. Historians still argue whether dream healing was placebo divine intervention or the quiet power of belief itself. But the records remain. People dreamt of saints touching their foreheads, of angels stitching their wounds, of fire leaving their bones. And many claimed they awoke better. You reach into your cloak, pull out a scrap of blank parchment. For a moment you hesitate. Then you write, "Last night I dreamt I couldn't speak, but someone else told my story." You place it among the others. This isn't confession. It isn't prophecy. It's simply placing the weight down. You look around and realize you're not alone. A woman sits at the edge of the shrine, eyes closed, lips moving. Not prayer, just breath. A man behind you leaves a ribbon. A child sets down a carved bird. There's no priest here, no sermons, just people and the strange private power of their sleeping minds. You wonder how many of these dreams were ever spoken aloud before this. You wonder how many more will come tonight. You leave quietly, footsteps soft on the grass. The stars are beginning to appear, timid, blinking into being. The moon is a sliver, like the start of a smile. Somewhere nearby, a dog barks. A baby cries. A man sings badly but with conviction. And you feel lighter. Like maybe for the first time you'll sleep without holding your breath. The moon is higher now, casting the world in silver and ink. You return to the inn, though it feels less like a place and more like a pause somewhere you happen to be, while your mind tugs at threads that began long before you got here. You climb the stairs slowly, your legs heavy with the weight of the day, and not just the walking. You don't light the candle this time. Instead, you sit by the small window. Outside, the village lies in quiet layers, smoke drifting up from the last fires. A dog curled in the dirt, an old man closing shutters. The world sleeps, and in that sleep, something stirs. You think of all the dreams we've carried today. Visions of beasts, of saints of love, and warnings, and unanswered prayers. And now you remember something different, something gentler. Dreams of the Virgin Mary. She appears more often in medieval dream accounts than almost anyone else. Not with fire and judgment, not with blood or thunder, but with presence, stillness, a soft gaze, a single word. Many claim to dream of her when they were in despair, illness, childbirth, war, loneliness. She came not to punish, but to comfort, or warn, or simply be there. You lie back on the bed, folding your hands over your chest. Your eyes are open, but you can already feel the drift beginning. In one 13th century account, a woman dying of fever dreamt that Mary sat beside her and wiped her forehead with a cloth made of stars. She woke drenched in sweat, healed by morning. Her neighbors called it a miracle. Her priest called it grace. Another tells of a farmer who dreamt of Mary holding his dead child. He wept in his sleep. When he awoke, the child was still gone, but the grief, he said, had lifted like fog at sunrise. And then there are the dreams, where she says nothing at all, just stands in a doorway, just watches, just knows. Historians still debate whether these were dreams, visions, hallucinations, or spiritual visitations, but they had an effect. People who dreamt of Mary often changed their lives, left work, forgave debts, built shrines, named children after her. She was in many ways the most reachable of the holy. Christ could judge, saints could be distant. But Mary, she might show up just to touch your hand. You think of the shrine you visited. You wonder how many dreamt of her there. How many left those folded scraps of parchment hoping to be seen, not punished, not healed, but simply seen. There's a quiet power in that. And in a world of chaos, of famine and war and plague, perhaps just the image of a mother watching from the edge of sleep was enough to hold people together. You roll onto your side. The room is still. The wind has gone quiet. And now you imagine her, not glowing, not winged, just a woman in soft blue standing near your bed. Maybe she looks tired. Maybe she looks exactly like someone you loved once. Maybe she smiles. Or maybe she says nothing. Because sometimes the message isn't words or symbols or riddles. It's simply the presence, the peace. You let your breath slow. Not every dream has teeth. Not every night is a warning. Some are blessings in disguise. Some are lullabies in the dark. Morning creeps back in without asking. You wake slowly, unsure of when sleep claimed you. The room is still dark, but you can hear the village breathing again. Someone splitting kindling a rooster, already yelling about his importance. The distant clink of a bucket hitting stone. Life resumes, and yet the dream lingers. You sit up, blink into the grainy shadows. There was something about stone steps, a voice, a distant bell, but like mist, the dream slips away just as you try to touch it. You know enough by now not to chase it. Instead, you pull on your cloak and descend into the morning. The innkeeper nods at you, eyes puffy, already sweeping. You step out into the early chill boots, crunching on frost-sparkled straw. The sky is pale as though someone scraped the color out of it during the night. Today you've heard is market day, but that's not where you're going. You're heading to the edge of the village, where a low stone wall crumbles around a tiny shrine. Not one of saints or mothers or martyrs. This one is for healing. Not your bones, not your fever, your dreams. You pass a line of pilgrims sitting in the silence outside the shrine, their faces lined with worry, hope, something harder to name. One clutches a woolen bundle, another a wooden doll. A child presses a locket to her lips like it holds an answer. You take your place at the end of the line and wait. Because today, like every market day, the healing priest will listen to dreams. Dreams and healing went hand in hand in the medieval mind. If your body ached, you prayed for sleep. If sleep came, you prayed for a dream. If the dream came, you prayed it would tell you what was wrong and how to make it right. In many places, shrines to saints doubled as healing centers. People would sleep near the relics. Bones, robes, even teeth, hoping to be granted a vision in the night. A clear sign, a recipe, a name. Historians still puzzle over whether these dream cures worked, but records survive of people waking with knowledge they shouldn't have had. A woman who dreamt of an herb she'd never seen, found it in the woods the next day. A man who saw a spring bubbling under a dead tree, which turned out to be real and clean. And cold, the line moves slowly. No one speaks. You think of one story, a boy who hadn't spoken in years. dreamt of a lamb following him into a field. The next morning he spoke a single word: home. The town never stopped talking about it. You shift from foot to foot as the sun stretches higher. Eventually, you reach the doorway. A man in a patched robe gestures you inside. He smells of rosemary and old paper. You enter a room lit by candles and something older than light. He gestures to a stool. You sit. He asks no questions. Just waits. You tell him about the falcon, the rose petal, the stranger's smile. He nods slowly, then says, "That's not a sickness. That's a signal." You frown. He explains. Sometimes dreams are symptoms, but sometimes they're calls. Not to heal, not to run, but to wake up. To something in your life, he says, or something just outside it. You ask if there's a difference between healing and warning. He smiles. If you listen, there isn't. He pours you a cup of tea that tastes like leaves and memory. Says nothing more. You leave quietly, unsure if you feel better but somehow steadier. Outside, the market has come alive. You rejoin the noise carts, clattering pigs, complaining vendors barking about cabbage. But you carry something quieter with you now. A dream folded into your chest like paper. Because in this world, dreams don't just mean something. Sometimes they do something. And whether they heal or haunt, they move you. Like a wind that touches only one leaf at a time. You drift through the market, your hands half full with nothing, just the feel of sun on your sleeves and the clatter of other people's mornings all around you. But your mind is somewhere else, still echoing with the priest's words. That's not a sickness. That's a signal. You didn't expect clarity, but now the lack of it feels like an answer in itself. There's a crowd gathered near a cart stacked with baskets of roots and dried flowers. At its center, a woman in a blue cap, arms moving like she's parting fog. She's a healer, clearly. Not one with holy oil or relics, but with potion stories and something else. Dreams. You pause just close enough to listen. She's speaking to a man holding a long stick. His hand trembles slightly, but his eyes are fixed on her. You say you dreamed of fire in your mouth, she says. Not pain, just flame. But you woke cold. She nods to herself. You're not sick. You're angry. You've been swallowing your rage. People murmur. The man says nothing. Just nods once, like he's been seen. This is another type of healing. Not from saints, not from monks, but from those who read dreams, like others, read wrinkles in the soil or patterns in the sky. In the Middle Ages, these women existed in every town on the edges of trust and tradition. Some were herbalists, others midwives, some accused of witchcraft, some called wise women or more quietly witches who hadn't yet been caught. They didn't always claim divine authority, but they listened. And they believed that dreams were symptoms of the body, the heart, or something deeper. One woman might say a dream of drowning meant a fever coming. Another might say it meant grief, not yet named. A third might hand you an herb and say, "Put this under your tongue before sleep. The dream will finish itself." Historians still argue whether these women were truly respected or simply tolerated. But in times of fear, war, pestilence, famine, they were the ones people turned to when priests gave no answers and doctors reached for leeches. You move closer. The woman has shifted to someone else. A teenage girl, arms crossed tightly, eyes darting. He chases you in your dream, yes? The healer says softly, but you're always barefoot. That's shame. She places a sprig of something sharp-smelling into the girl's hand. Sleep near time. It'll show you his face next time. You shiver. She sees you then, doesn't beckon, just nods once. You walk over. You don't tell her the whole dream, just one part. The falcon was bleeding. She doesn't blink, and you didn't try to stop it. You shake your head. I couldn't move. She nods. Then the wound isn't yours. It's someone else's. You ask quietly. Then why did I see it? Because you can carry it. You don't fully understand, but you feel understood. She hands you a tiny pouch. Sleep with this, she says. And eat something green tomorrow. No explanation. No cost. Just instruction. You thank her. A dog barks nearby. A pot clangs. The spell of the moment breaks, but something lingers. You realize now, dream healing wasn't always about curing. Sometimes it was about giving shape to something that had none. A name to a shadow. A story to await. And once it had formed, it could be held or let go. You tuck the pouch into your cloak and step back into the crowd. A woman hums as she stirs a pot. A man sharpens a blade with rhythmic care. A child laughs at nothing. All around you, people live. And tonight, they will all dream. Some will see mothers, others monsters. Some will wake sobbing, others smiling. And maybe come morning, they'll carry those dreams here to be translated, interpreted, or simply released. You catch your reflection in a water basin. You look the same, but you're not. You've been walking through other people's dreams all day, and something of you has changed. By late afternoon, the sun settles low on the fields like a hand resting gently on a shoulder. Everything slows. Even the wind, which has been dancing between rooftops and treetops all day, seems to pause and take a long breath. You've walked more miles than you meant to, past the market, past the shrine, through the winding paths that wrap around the edges of the village like loose thread. And you find yourself standing on a ridge overlooking the distant hills where the trees catch gold in their leaves and the road vanishes into the horizon. The light makes everything look like a memory. And just like that, you remember the story of a young woman, Alison, they say, who lived in a place not unlike this one. She was quiet, soft-spoken, often forgotten. But her dreams were not. She dreamt of things before they happened. A calf born with 2 hearts. A man struck by lightning under a cloudless sky. A letter arriving for someone who never received letters. One by one, her dreams proved true, and people noticed. At first, they treated her like a miracle. Gifts. Thanks. A candle lit in her name. But then came the bad dreams. She dreamt of a fire in the fields. She dreamt of a boy falling from a tree. He did. She dreamt of a priest dying in his sleep. The next morning he was gone. Suddenly it wasn't a gift. It was suspicion. The same people who once asked her for insight now avoided her in the street. A few crossed themselves when she passed. Some whispered words like cursed marked witch. Alison left town not long after. No one knows what became of her. Some say she found a monastery that welcomed dreamers. Others say she disappeared into the forest and became a spirit herself, whispering into the dreams of travelers who strayed too far from the road. You sit on the ridge and watch the clouds slide by like silent ships. Dreams, you realize, are only welcomed when they don't make people uncomfortable. Predicting joy, that's fine. Predicting disaster, that's dangerous. Historians still argue about cases like Alison's, were such dreamers punished because of fear or because they genuinely believed she was dangerous? The truth, as always, lives somewhere between ignorance and terror, and yet the dreams don't stop. In one record from 15th century Germany, a farmer was fined for spreading dread after telling neighbors about a dream of wolves entering the village. A week later, bandits raided the grain stores, wearing furs and carrying torches. Coincidence? Possibly. But after that, the dreamers stopped talking. You lie back on the ridge arms folded beneath your head. The earth is cool and steady. Above you, a single hawk circles lazily. You half wonder if it's watching you. You close your eyes, and in that moment between breath and not quite sleep, something shifts. You see a path lined with candles, a door with no handle, a woman made of smoke holding out a key. No words, just the feeling of being asked to decide. When you blink again, the sky has changed color. You sit up slowly, heart steady, head clearer. You don't know what the dream meant. Not yet. But you know it was yours. And no one can take that from you. Not priests, not scholars, not even those who fear you. You brush the grass from your cloak and rise. Below the village begins to glow. Again lamps lit, fires stoke the lull between meal and night. You start the walk back a little slower now. The kind of slow that comes with understanding. Because some dreams aren't meant to be explained. They're meant to be carried. You return just as dusk spills its last colors over the rooftops, washing everything in a warm, amber hush. The village feels softer now, like a story winding down. Pots, scrubbed tools, stowed the day folded into memory. Smoke rises in slow spirals, curling like old handwriting into the sky. And yet the night is only beginning. Because tonight someone will dream again. You pass a house where a woman sings to a child in a cradle, her voice low and tired, but sure. You hear no words, only the rhythm a lullaby passed down like bread or blessings. You pause without meaning to. Because dreams don't begin with sleep. They begin with sound. And in the medieval world, lullabies were more than just comfort. They were spells, whispers to keep the night gentle, rhymes to guard a child's mind as it wandered the dark, songs layered with hope, superstition, and small fierce love. You remember one from an old manuscript. Sleep, my babe, and do not roam past the path that leads you home. If you dream of teeth or flame, say the Lord's and wake the same. Charming if mildly terrifying. Some lullabies included advice for dreams, warnings, promises, even bargains. If you meet a man with no face, turn away. If you see a mirror with no reflection, wake up. If you are given bread in your dream, do not eat it. Ever. Historians still debate how seriously these lyrics were meant to be taken. But in a world where the boundary between waking and sleeping felt thin as worn linen, even a rhyme could become ritual. You keep walking, past a stable, past a dog stretched out beside a barrel, past a closed shutter where candlelight flickers behind a cracked pane. You catch a glimpse, a woman sitting by herself, hands folded, just staring into the flame. Maybe she's waiting for a dream, or maybe she's trying to forget one. And that brings you to another truth of medieval dreaming. Some dreams were not shared, not with priests, not with friends, not even with the page. They were too sharp, too strange, too sacred. Some were what we'd now call lucid, where the dreamer knew they were dreaming. These were rare and often feared, because in that kind of dream you had choice. You could walk toward the thing chasing you. You could speak the name no one dared say. You could fall without hitting the ground. And that kind of control was unsettling, unnatural, powerful. In one recorded case from a cloistered abbey, a nun confessed to choosing to stay in a dream where angels showed her the sins of her sisters. The abbess was horrified not by the content, but by the choice. Who chooses to remain in a dream? Who dares to control it? You step into the square as the last light drains from the sky. A few villagers linger, talking softly, throwing scraps to dogs, shaking out rugs. You nod to them. They nod back. Not everyone knows your name, but by now they recognize your face, the one who asks about dreams. You find a bench by the well and sit. The stars arrive quietly without announcement. Just 1, then 3, then 10. No constellations you recognize. But maybe someone here does. Maybe someone once looked at that sky and saw a woman running, a boy kneeling, a wheel of fire. Maybe they dreamed of it first and then looked up to find it was already there. Because sometimes dreams don't reflect reality. They prefigure it. And you think of all the times in the last few days when a dream showed up before the event. Not after, not shaped by memory, but leading it. A child dreams of falling, then falls. A man dreams of rain, then drowns. A woman dreams of leaving, then never comes back. It's tempting to call that coincidence. Safer even. But what if it's not? What if the dream walks just one step ahead of the waking world? And what if that's always been true? You rise. The well glistens faintly under starlight. You think of the pouch of herbs tucked in your cloak, the parchment still folded in your pocket, the dreams you've heard, the ones you've had, the ones still waiting. You think of how some people enter sleep, hoping to be cured, others hoping to be seen, and others still just hoping to forget. The village is asleep again. You walk through it slowly, as if not to wake it. Doors are shut. Chimneys exhale their last breath. Even the animals seem hushed, as if they too are waiting for something to begin, something only the dark understands. You pass the chapel. The bell is silent. A candle flickers behind the stained glass. You don't go in. Tonight, your path leads elsewhere. Down the hill, past the rows of beans and barley, past the leaning fence and the owl watching you like a judge. You're heading to a place where sleep isn't a luxury. It's a burden. The sick house. It's smaller than you expected. Just a low wooden building with moss crawling up the beams and a door that groans when you touch it. Inside, the air smells of sweat herbs, vinegar, and something that was probably once meat. And dreams. So many dreams. You step into a room lined with straw mattresses. Shapes lie curled under blankets. Some motionless, others twitching with fever or fear. A woman tends to them, quietly moving between beds like a shadow with purpose. She sees you, nods once. You kneel beside a boy whose eyes are closed, but dart beneath the lids like birds trapped behind glass. Burning trees, the healer whispers, reading your face before you can ask. He dreams of burning trees. Another man gasps in his sleep. He dreams of drowning in coins. Another sobs silently, his hand clawing at the blanket. His dreams are too loud. In the medieval world, dreams were often treated as symptoms of illness, especially fever dreams. They were seen as messages from within, a way for the body to cry out when the mouth could no longer speak. Doctors, if you could call them, that sometimes used dreams as part of their diagnosis. If you dreamt of teeth, they'd check your stomach. If you dreamt of dogs, your liver. If you dreamt of music, your brain. Historians still debate whether these methods were superstition dressed in robes or a rudimentary form of psychosomatic medicine. But in truth, the dream mattered less than the fact that someone asked about it. Because in that bed, sweating and shivering and maybe dying, you had nothing but your dreams. You crouch beside the boy. His mouth is moving. No sound. You can't help yourself. You take his hand. It's burning and small. And he grips yours like he's been waiting for it. I dream of walking. He whispers suddenly. You lean closer. From where? Nowhere, he says. But I keep going. You don't let go. In some hospitals, especially those run by monastic orders, there were dream watchers. Not physicians, not nurses. Just people assigned to sit by the sick, record their dreams, and pass them to the priest, or the family, or the gravedigger. One manuscript from 1315 contains a log of fever dreams from a plague ward. Snippets only. Saw mother covered in birds, teeth falling into wine. A woman gave me water. Then took my face, page after page. Not medical records, not quite. But something more human, a map of minds unraveling and reforming as the body failed. You rise and walk the room slowly. Not every dream here is torment. An old man sleeps peacefully, a smile touching his mouth. She says he dreams of music, the healer murmurs. Of bells and wheat and someone brushing his hair. You ask, is that healing? She shrugs. Doesn't matter. He dies easier that way. You leave the sick house in silence. Not because it's sad, though it is, but because it's sacred. These are dreams no one will write down, no one will interpret. They will vanish with the breath that carries them away. And yet they were just as real, just as vivid, just as valid. Because in the end, your last dream might be the only one that tells the truth. You walk back up the path, feet soft in the grass. The stars are clearer now. The sky swept clean. You wonder what the boy will dream next. You wonder if you'll ever see burning trees. You wonder what your own body's trying to say, just beneath the skin. The path winds back toward the village, and your thoughts wander with it back to the chapel, the market, the dream, books, the sick house. You've heard so many dreams now, yours and others tangled together like branches in wind. And yet, there's still one place you haven't looked. The mind of the scholar. You take a narrow path leading behind the abbey toward a low stone building with an iron-bound door and narrow slitted windows. It's not part of the monastery proper. It's the scriptorium, the place where knowledge is copied, argued, and sometimes invented. A monk greets you there, this one more ink than skin. His fingers are stained black, and there's a smudge across his temple where he must have scratched his head mid-transcription. You've come about the somnium debate, he says, before you can open your mouth. You blink. He smiles. Everyone does eventually. He ushers you inside. The air is thick with parchment dust and barely restrained opinion. Shelves sag under the weight of scrolls, charts, diagrams of the brain as imagined by men who never dissected one, lists of symbols and their meanings. Latin, Greek, Arabic, Hebrew. Some of the texts are so old they look like they might flake into powder if you breathe too hard. In one corner, a chalkboard covered in furious scribbles. Dreams, divine, demonic, digestive. The monk chuckles. It's always those three. And he explains. For centuries, scholars argued about where dreams came from. Were they messages from God, or tricks of the devil, or just the result of too much goat cheese and not enough sleep? It was more than idle speculation. If dreams were divine, they were sacred, worth listening to, worth obeying. If they were demonic, they were dangerous temptations in disguise. And if they were simply biological, well, then they didn't mean anything. And that was almost worse. You step closer to the board. Under divine, it says.
Clarity.
Instruction. Saints. Dreams before battles. Visions of Mary. Under demonic. Lust. Fear. Blasphemy. temptation. Flying, under-digestive. Fish dreams. Goat dreams. Fire dreams. Man turned into ham underlined twice. Historians still argue over how much weight medieval scholars placed on each theory. In truth, most accepted all three at once, depending on the dream's tone timing and who was asking. A dream that helped a bishop. Divine, a dream that frightened a nun. Demonic, a dream that embarrassed a noble. Definitely digestive. The monk hands you a scroll. Aristotle said, dreams come from impressions left on the soul by sensation. He shrugs. The soul doesn't forget what it touches. You read part of it. It's dry, full of phrases like humoral imbalance and cerebral vapors. Another monk nearby snorts. Plato thought the soul tried to escape the body during sleep and saw the forms of truth in dreams. He slams a book shut. Personally, I think Plato was lonely. You hide your smile. They show you a map next. Not of lands, but of the mind. Drawn centuries ago, it divides the brain into three parts. Common sense in the forehead, imaginative faculty center, memory toward the back. Dreams, the map claims, pass from memory into imagination and are judged hopefully by the common sense. Unless the devil sneaks in through the ears. Yes, the ears. You ask about dreams that come true. The monk sighs. Those confuse everyone. You press, are they divine? He shrugs. Sometimes, but we've had cases of dreams predicting the future that were clearly not holy. One brother dreamt of lightning striking a tree, and it did. Another dreamt of a flooded cellar, and sure enough, he trails off. So, you ask, he leans in. Sometimes I think time is thinner when we sleep. Not divine, not demonic. Just thin. You're quiet. There's a final corner of the scriptorium. The one they don't show everyone. It contains banned dreams. Books labeled temptation, false prophecy, dreams that led to heresy. They're locked in a cabinet, keys held by the abbot. Some dreamers were too convincing, too popular. Their visions drew crowds, started movements, challenged doctrine, and they were silenced, not because they were wrong, but because they were loud. You step back into the sunlight, mind spinning with ink and paradox. You think of what the monk said. Sometimes I think time is thinner when we sleep. You look at the sky. It's still the same sky, but maybe it's closer than you thought. You walk slowly back through the monastery courtyard and boots quiet on the gravel path. Your mind still echoes with arguments and chalk dust and the word thin. Time is thin when we sleep. The idea clings to you strange and beautiful like a cobweb across your sleeve that you almost don't want to brush away. And now, of course, it's time to talk about the dreams you're not supposed to have. The rebellious ones. Because while much of medieval dreaming was deeply personal, healing, grieving, warning, or there were also dreams that reached higher, or perhaps lower depending on who you asked. Dreams that rattled thrones, challenged the church, and planted dangerous thoughts in ordinary minds. You head toward the edge of the village where fields roll into forest and the houses get farther apart. A man tends a small fire near the road, roasting chestnuts, eyes narrowed, as if he's still halfway in a dream himself. He doesn't look at you, but he speaks. You hear about Thomas, he says. Dreamt the king fell off his horse and choked on a crown. You blink. 3 days ago, he adds, told the blacksmith. Blacksmith told the priest. Thomas is gone now. Gone as in, he nods once. Gone. This is what happens when a dream steps over its line. In some villages, dreaming of royalty was merely impolite. In others, it was treason, especially if your dream showed the king dead, or the church burning, or the nobles weeping as peasants danced in their halls. Because dreams, after all, were considered messages. So if your dream challenged authority, who was the sender? God, or something worse. You keep walking. There's a place up ahead past a grove of ash trees, a stone circle. Nothing grand, just knee-high rocks in a lopsided ring, forgotten by the road and remembered by rumor. People say dreamers came here when they couldn't say what they'd seen anywhere else. Some carved symbols into the stones. Others buried offerings, ribbons, feathers, tiny clay figures, even old coins with the faces scratched away. A secret circle for those whose dreams were dangerous. You find it easily. The air here feels heavier, not ominous, just full. Like it's remembering something. You kneel by one of the stones. A symbol is etched into its surface. Not Latin, not even script. Just a curve, a dot, a series of lines that suggest movement. You wonder if it means something, or if meaning here is beside the point. In the 14th century, a woman in the Low Countries claimed she dreamt of the Pope apologizing to beggars. The church declared her mad, but people listened. Too many, perhaps. Her dreams spread. So did fear. She disappeared, but her dream outlived her. Historians still debate whether she existed or whether she was the dream of someone else. But her story appears again and again in local texts, wrapped in different names, set in different towns. A dream that refused to die. You brush away leaves near another stone. There's something tucked beneath it, a small, torn scrap of linen stained with wax. A dream offering, maybe, or a memory. These dreams, rebellious, loud, defiant, weren't always meant to start revolutions. Sometimes they were just the soul's attempt to correct a world gone sideways. A way to say what couldn't be said in daylight. In your mind, then the dreams return. The bleeding falcon. The smile without a face. The door without a handle. You wonder what they'd call your dream. Divine, demonic, digestive, or perhaps disruptive. Because a dream in the right hands, or the wrong ones, can be a spark. And sparks don't care who starts the fire. You stay a while in the circle, letting the shadows stretch. A crow calls from the tree line. A wind kicks up and fades again, as if tasting your presence. And you think of Thomas. Did he know what his dream would cost him? Or did he simply believe that it had to be shared? You rise quietly, brushing the dirt from your knees. Some dreams must be buried. Others refuse. You leave the stone circle with its heavy silence behind. But something clings to you. Not dirt, not coal. Just a sense that the world is deeper than it looks. That every hedge or whisper might hold meaning if you're still enough to hear it. As you walk back toward the village, the sky fades from gold to navy. The stars pricking through in shy, scattered clusters. You look up not to admire them, but to read them. Because tonight, finally we come to the stars, to dreams in astrology. In the Middle Ages, dreams were often filtered through the stars like wine through cloth. Not just omens. Not just memories, but reflections of the heavens, shaped by the alignment of planets and the hour of birth, the rising moon. Astrologers had charts for everything. If you dreamed of water during Mars, rising in Scorpio, danger. If you dreamed of blood under a waning moon, false prophecy. If Venus was in the 9th house and you dreamt of wolves, romantic betrayal, obviously. You find the astrologer in the village square, seated beneath an open tent, stitched with strange constellations and Latin phrases that glow faintly in the firelight. His table is covered with brass instruments. Astrolabes compasses a sphere that turns with a slow groan when he touches it. He doesn't ask your name. He asks for your birthday. You give it. He nods. Now he says, "Tell me what you saw." You describe the falcon, the rose petal, the smile. He doesn't blink. Just begins turning dials, marking positions, sketching something onto a wax tablet with his thumb. Saturn is watching your house of memory, he murmurs. Jupiter crosses your 8th gate. The dream is not about the past. You raise an eyebrow. Then what? He looks up. It's about what you're not doing. Historians still debate whether medieval astrology was seen as science faith or glorified guesswork. But in its time, it was considered serious business. Universities taught it. Doctors consulted it. Kings refused to make decisions without it. And yes, dreams were part of the system. In the Oneirocritica, a dream manual influenced by Greek tradition and copied across Europe, the reader is advised to consult both the time of the dream and the position of the stars before attempting interpretation. A dream at dawn might mean one thing under Venus and something entirely different under Mars. You ask the astrologer if your dream means something good or bad. He frowns. That's not how dreams work. Then how do they work? He gestures to the sky. That depends on where you are in the story. He offers no more. Just gives you a small card with a series of unfamiliar symbols scratched in charcoal. Carry it for a week, he says. Then burn it. You don't argue. You leave the tent with the card folded in your hand, the symbols already smudging your skin. The stars above shimmer a little brighter now, though maybe it's just your imagination. Or maybe you're starting to understand how people could believe their fates were up there, spinning in slow loops through velvet dark. that dreams were not dreams, but echoes of cosmic machinery, wheels within wheels. Not prophecy, but resonance. You pause beside the well and look up once more, and this time the stars don't look distant. They look like they're watching. You don't sleep that night, not for lack of trying. You lie in bed, eyes closed, breath, slow, body still. But your mind won't settle. It paces, it circles, it taps at the door of something unspoken. So you rise barefoot, careful not to wake the boards beneath your feet. The inn is quite silent even. You slip down the stairs past the coals still glowing in the hearth and step into the open night. The village is draped in hush. No wind, no owls, just the creak of a shutter, the crunch of frost under your soles, and the sound of your own thoughts. You're not alone. Near the chapel, a small group huddles in the shadows, 4 or 5 figures gathered around a single candle, their heads bowed. They speak in turns, one at a time. Voices low and shaking. You move closer, careful. They're dreamers, or rather followers of one. The speaker, a man with a linen cap and a bruise under one eye, describes a dream where a black horse walked into the market and opened its mouth not to neigh, but to sing. He says it sang in Latin, though he doesn't know the words. The others nod. One writes it down. You found a dream cult. They weren't common, but they existed. Charismatic dreamers who claimed divine communication. Visions of salvation, of end times, of secret truths buried in scripture or beneath the soil. Sometimes they gathered followers. Sometimes they built movements. Sometimes they fell apart spectacularly. This one seems small. Scared, quiet. You sit at the edge of the circle. They glance at you. No one asks who you are. One woman says she dreamt of a tree growing upside down from the sky. She says she's been told that means the world will reverse, that soon the poor will rule and the rich will dig ditches. You hear a murmur of hope. Another man describes a dream where the river ran backward, swallowing the bridge. He says the bridge is the church. Everyone nods again. You realize now these aren't just dreams. They're grievances wrapped in symbols, soft rebellion dressed in metaphor. And in the Middle Ages, that was dangerous, very dangerous. Historians still debate how seriously the authorities took these cults. Some were tolerated for a time, especially if they stayed small. But others were crushed, quickly, publicly, and without mercy. Because if people began believing a dream more than a bishop, that wasn't just spiritual confusion, that was political risk. You stay quiet as the speaker reads from a scroll cracked and faded, filled with transcribed dreams from strangers. Some poetic, some chilling. One reads, I saw the lamb open its mouth and fire poured out. It said, not peace, a reckoning. Another, the moon cracked like an egg, and the yoke became men in black cloaks. They took our names. Another still, I woke up and my shadow stayed behind. You ask softly, do you believe all of them? The speaker doesn't look at you, just says, we believe what speaks. You sit there longer than you mean to, just listening, not to the words, but to the need beneath them. To be heard, to be seen, to be part of something bigger than yourself. And dreams they offer that, no titles, no gatekeepers, just visions. And the hope that maybe they mean more than you can explain. You rise to leave. No one stops you. No one thanks you. They simply keep speaking one after another, their words rising with the candle smoke into the open sky. You walk back through the frost, the hush even thicker now. You pause at the chapel door, wondering if the priest knows what's happening outside his own walls, or if he dreams of it and pretends not to. You lie back in your bed, eyes wide open. You don't dream, but you remember everything. And you know, now more than ever, that dreams aren't always meant to stay private. Some are seeds, some are sparks, and some, when spoken aloud, begin to change the world. The morning comes slower than usual, gray, reluctant, as if the sun itself isn't quite sure it wants to rise. You stretch under the stiff blanket bones, creaking like old wood, and wonder if you dreamt anything at all. Your mind is empty or too full to notice, but that doesn't mean the dreams are gone. You step outside, breath fogging in the chilled air. The village is stirring. Doors crack open. Pots clatter. A woman pours water onto the steps and scrubs like she's trying to erase more than just dirt. And then you see it. An artist, young hair the color of dry hay fingers, already stained with pigment, unrolling a fresh piece of canvas beside the chapel. Around him, pots of ochre and charcoal brushes laid in neat rows. He's painting dreams, not his own, yours, everyone's. The wall of the chapel has become a tapestry of sleep. A night made of bees, a saint holding a burning apple. A bridge of stars, a girl standing ankle deep in crows. You stare, breath caught somewhere between memory and awe. In the Middle Ages, art was not just decoration, it was translation, especially when it came to dreams. Illuminated manuscripts, altar panels, church frescoes, all carried visual metaphors born from dream logic. And the artist, he was part alchemist, part prophet, part thief. He stole your sleep and gave it color. You ask him where the images come from. He shrugs. They bring them, he says. He nods toward the people passing by. Sure enough, a woman approaches, murmurs a sentence. He nods, begins sketching. You watch as he brings to life her dream. A river running uphill, a stag, kneeling in prayer, a window with no room behind it. You think of the medieval dream books again. Many of them included illustrations, flat, surreal, vivid. Eyes floating over trees, lions with candle flames in their mouths, wheels turning in the sky. These were more than just images. They were maps, guides for the sleeping soul. Some even believed looking at a picture of a dream could make it come true. Others believed it could prevent it. Historians still debate the purpose of such images, whether they were didactic, devotional, or therapeutic. But one thing is clear. They made dreams real, touchable. And once something can be touched, it can be shared. You kneel to examine a painting still wet. It shows a figure lying in bed, their mouth open, and a vine growing out from between their lips, flowering into stars. No face, just light. You don't know if it's yours, but it feels familiar. You sit beside the artist. For a while, you simply watch. People come and go. Some whisper. Some point. One child stares too long and begins to cry. Not all dreams are gentle. Not all paintings should be. He tells you that once a woman asked him to paint a dream. She hadn't told anyone, not even her husband. It was of a child standing in a field barefoot, holding two hearts, one gold, one rotting. The child said nothing, just looked at her. She left without saying whether the dream had come true yet. You ask how many of the dreams he paints become real. He looks at you, really looks, for the first time. All of them, he says. You don't press. You don't need to. Because even if that isn't literally true, even if some fade and vanish and never return, it feels true. And in dreams, that's enough. You rise. He offers you a brush. You hesitate. Then you dip it in blue. Not sky blue. Not ocean. But that strange in-between color you've only ever seen in the space between sleep and waking. You paint a circle, then a hand reaching toward it, then a rose with no stem. No one asks what it means. And that's the gift, because some dreams are meant to be shared with words, others with silence, and others with color. The sun climbs higher now, pressing against rooftops, spilling light into corners that still smell of damp wood and coal smoke. The chapel wall gleams with strange colors and stranger shapes, the dream paintings rippling slightly in the morning breeze, like they might float off and fly into someone else's sleep. But your path pulls elsewhere, toward home, or whatever passes for it now. You pass through the village square again, past the blacksmith's anvil, and the baker dusting flour from his apron. Life hums along the way. It always does after strange nights, familiar motions carrying people forward, even as the air feels different. And then you see her, a child no more than 7, sitting alone on the stone steps of the well, barefoot, hair wild, clutching a doll with one arm, the other wrapped tightly around her knees. She doesn't cry. She just stares at the ground, like it told her something she didn't want to hear. You sit beside her. She doesn't move. You ask softly, dream. She nods. You wait. And eventually she says, I was in the woods, but the trees had faces. You ask what the faces did. She shakes her head. They didn't talk. They just watched me. All of them. A pause. And then I stepped on a mirror. Your skin prickles. In the Middle Ages, children's dreams weren't often recorded. Not by the church, not by scribes. They were dismissed as nonsense products of imagination, too young to carry meaning. But among families in whispered kitchens and behind shuttered windows, children's dreams were treated with care, fear sometimes, often. Because a child dreaming of death might signal a sick relative. A child dreaming of water might mean a flood. And a child dreaming of mirrors, well, no one liked that. In some rural traditions, mirrors were believed to trap part of the soul. If you dreamt of breaking one, or worse, walking into one, it meant you were in danger of forgetting who you were, or becoming someone else. You ask her what happened after the mirror. She says, "I bled, but it didn't hurt." And the faces close their eyes. You try to offer comfort. Again, she shakes her head. "I think they were sad for me," she whispers. Not scared, sad. There's a moment of silence. You don't try to fill it, because you know now dreams aren't always to be solved. Sometimes they are witnessed. She tucks her doll closer and says, "Mama told me not to tell anyone. She said if I say it out loud, it might come true." That belief too runs deep. In many medieval households, especially among the poor, dreams were spoken cautiously, as if saying them made them real. Some were only shared with elders or with animals, or whispered into rivers in hopes the current would carry them away. You ask her what she wants to do with it. She shrugs, then leans against you just slightly, like a bird unsure of the branch. You sit there for a while. Eventually, a woman calls from across the square. The child rises, looks at you once more, not with fear, but with the kind of quiet understanding usually reserved for old souls, and runs toward the voice. You watch her go. You wonder what the trees said when they closed their eyes. And you think for the first time about how many dreams we lose, how many vanish into bedsheets, how many are silenced by fear, by ridicule, by time, and how many still live inside children who never learn the words to describe them. You walk on, past the old fence, past the dreamer's bench, past the door you closed last night. Everything feels both real and unreal, like a dream you might wake from or might fall deeper into. You reach into your cloak, pull out the scrap of parchment from the dream shrine. You read it again. "Last night I dreamt I couldn't speak, but someone else told my story." You smile, because maybe that someone was you. By now the village is all light and dust and the distant clang of metal. You walk the road with a steadiness that wasn't there days ago when your feet first stepped into this place and your dreams were quiet and half-formed. Now they have weight, now they speak. And now you're thinking about recurrence, because while many medieval dreams were one-offs, messages, signs, or nonsense, there were others that came again and again and again, and those were the ones people feared the most. Recurring dreams weren't just strange. They were personal. They pursued you, repeated like a song you couldn't unhear, changed only slightly each time, just enough to convince you they were watching you back. You pause at the edge of a field, the barley tall and swaying in waves. A man stands in the middle of it, arms limp at his sides. He doesn't move until you call out. He turns. His face is pale. "I saw it again," he says. No context, no explanation, but you know. He comes closer. The church was upside down this time, floating, but the bell still rang. You ask how often it happens. Every night, for weeks. In the Middle Ages, recurring dreams were sometimes believed to be evidence of a spiritual debt, something unresolved, something trapped between sleep and salvation. Other times, they were seen as warnings growing louder with each repetition, until finally you listened, or broke. One monk wrote of dreaming each night of a staircase, each time with one more step added. On the 30th night, he reached the top and saw himself below dead. He didn't sleep again after that. Another account describes a woman who dreamt of a door in the woods that refused to open. Every night she returned, until finally it did. Inside, she saw a cradle and a shroud. She miscarried 3 days later. Historians still debate whether recurring dreams were a form of medieval PTSD or mystical persistence. But for the people who lived them, the difference didn't matter. They just wanted them to stop. You ask the man what he does when the dream ends. He shakes his head. "I don't know if it ever does." And that's the other truth. Some dreams don't end when you wake. They trail behind you, stick to your skin, echo in your breath. You carry them like bones no one can see. In one village, there was a belief that if a dream returned more than 3 times, it had to be spoken aloud or buried in a field. You mention this. The man nods. "I tried both." You don't ask which field. Instead, you walk beside him for a while. No words, just the sound of grain brushing your legs and your own thoughts unraveling quietly. You remember the falcon again? The rose, the smile, and suddenly you realize it has returned. Not always the same, but always there. In different forms, a bird, a wound, a warning, and a question you've never answered. You stop. You wonder how many times must a dream repeat before you call it a message? How many times before you listen? You ask the man what he thinks the upside-down church means. He shrugs. Maybe the world is about to change. You don't disagree. Because dreams don't always offer explanations. Sometimes they offer pressure. Gentle, relentless, like water-shaping stone. And maybe the dream doesn't want to be understood. Maybe it wants to be remembered. You part ways at the edge of the road. He turns back to his field. You keep walking. Your own dream now repeating in the rhythm of your steps. Not a puzzle, not a prophecy, but a companion. The road narrows as you walk farther from the village, curling between hills and low hedgerows, as though it too is winding toward some kind of conclusion. The sky has softened, neither morning nor afternoon, a hazy in between. You pass a wooden cart abandoned on the roadside, its wheels canted sideways as if someone once dreamt of leaving and almost did. And now it's time to talk about endings. Not just of journeys or of stories, but of dreams themselves. Because in the Middle Ages, how a dream ended was just as important as what it showed, sometimes more. Did you wake up suddenly? That was a sign of falsehood. A divine dream left slowly, gently, like a curtain lowering. A demonic one yanked you out with sweat and thunder. Did you wake laughing? That meant luck. Crying, a warning. Silent. That was the one people feared most. You reach a small clearing. A woman sits alone on a blanket, surrounded by lengths of thread dyed in saffron indigo bloodroot. She's weaving something a circle made of smaller circle. No loom, just fingers in focus. You ask her what she's making. She doesn't look up. The dreams end. You sit. She tells you that for 3 years she's dreamt of a room with no doors, the walls covered in words she cannot read. Each night, a new word appears. When the walls are full, she believes the dream will end. You ask if she's scared. She finally looks at you. I'm not scared of it ending. I'm scared of waking before it does. This too was a medieval fear that a dream might be interrupted, that you'd lose the message halfway through, that your soul would come back before it had time to bring back what it learned. Some monks practiced controlled waking, a form of meditative sleep, where they tried to step out at the right moment, just as the vision faded. Some never quite came back the same. Historians still argue whether this was a precursor to lucid dreaming or just deeply committed napping. But what's clear is that for many medieval people, the way a dream ended wasn't random. It was a kind of punctuation, a final clue. You watch as the woman ties off one loop of thread, then begins another. She says that when she first had the dream, she cried every morning. But now, she misses it when it doesn't come. And you understand. Because sometimes dreams grow larger than sleep. They become ritual, company, even identity. She holds up the circle to the light. The threads shimmer like thoughts made tangible. She smiles. When it ends, she says, "I'll burn it." You ask why. Because some dreams don't want to be kept. They just want to be heard. You stay until she's finished one final loop. Then you rise. There's a stillness to your steps now, not heavy, not slow, just certain. The kind of stillness that comes not from knowing what something means, but from realizing you don't need to. You're not hunting answers anymore. You're following echoes. You crest a hill, and below you is a house. Small, crooked, smoke rising from its chimney like a sigh. You don't recognize it, but it feels familiar. Like a place you visited many times before. Maybe not in waking, but in dreams. You walk down the hill, each step slower than the last, as if your body already knows this is where things settle. Not end, just settle. The path flattens the birds quiet, and the little house waits as if it's been expecting you. The door creaks open without a touch. Inside it smells of warm bread, dried lavender, and something older pages perhaps. Time, memory. You don't announce yourself, you simply enter. The room is simple. One chair, one bed, one hearth. On the wall, a shelf of small items, nothing labeled, all meaningful. A wooden whistle, a broken candle stub, a circle of woven hair. You don't know what any of them mean, but you know they matter. And then you see the bed. You know instinctively that it's for you, not because you're tired, not because you want sleep, But because dreams don't just happen in beds, sometimes they end in them. You sit, the mattress sighs beneath your weight. You breathe in, and this time, you let the sleep come. Not like an accident, but like a promise. And while your eyes close, your mind opens to all the dreams you've gathered. The saints, the stars, the monsters, the mother, the mirror, the child, the circle of thread. They flicker through you, not fading, but settling. Not every dream gave you a message. Not every vision offered clarity, but each gave you presence. You don't know if you're waking now, or if this moment is the dream. You don't care, because it no longer matters. The medieval world believed dreams could be divine, dangerous healing, heretical, or hollow. But above all, they believe this, that dreams are doors. And sometimes, doors don't open outward. They open inward. You lie back, hands at your sides. You hear the wind outside the house shift gently like a blanket being pulled across the hills. A fire crackles low. There's no sound beyond that. No ending bell, no final interpretation. Just the quiet and the knowing that you've seen something old, something forgotten, and you'll carry it now like so many others have. Not in words, not in writing, but in sleep.